Hello, good morning, America, and good evening, Slovenia. My name is Ana Maria, and I would like to welcome you all to the 7th webinar of the Entrepreneurship in New Reality project. Before we start, I would like to check if you can hear me well and see me well. And please just send some message into the chat so that I know that everything is working as it should be. Okay, I'll take that as a yes, so we can proceed. Thank you so much. So I would like to thank to all of our guest speakers today who have joined us to share their experience on a really important topic that is going to be cybersecurity. And I would like also to extend my gratitude to the moderator for today and to all of participants who are joining us here to learn more about this important topic. And before we start, just for all of you who maybe not, who have not been with us in the previous webinars, just a short introduction of what Entrepreneurship in New Reality webinars are actually about. So the ENR project, as we call it, features a series of 10 webinars, all covering 10 actual topics in this new reality. So we are going from entrepreneurship, innovation, economic reforms to the topic of cybersecurity, which is on the panel for today. And in all these 10 webinars, we have brought together more than 30 guest speakers coming both from the United States and from Slovenia to share their professional know-how, their ideas and perspectives so that we can all learn, grow and so that we can connect on the both sides of the ocean. The Entrepreneurship in New Reality project was created by GEA College Faculty of Entrepreneurship, which works as a modern business center and has been educating entrepreneurs for more than 30 years now. But of course, we have to extend our gratitude to the United States Embassy in Ljubljana, who is a supporter of this project, and to all our national and international partners, as without all of them, this project would not have been possible. So before we start and we go to this important topic of cybersecurity, I hope that all of you who are joining here us today will get some new knowledge, new ideas, and new perspectives so that you can all grow not only as entrepreneurs, but also as individuals. And now I would like to present our moderator for today. And we have Mr. Igor Hostnik joining us, who's going to lead today's panel. Igor is an experienced manager and has been committed to the IT sector and to the cybersecurity field of business for all his professional career. So Igor, it is indeed a privilege to have you here today with us, and the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Ana Maria, and welcome all distinguished guests. We will have, before, let's say, we start with the discussion, probably we have some welcome address by US Embassy, and afterwards I would like to expose some topics which are, let's say, quite popular recent months and especially recent years.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep it really short because I would much rather hear from our guests, but I just appreciate everybody's time this evening. This is a really important topic for Slovenia, who is a leader in this field, but also for our bilateral cooperation. And it's one in which we have so many areas of mutual interest that we're really glad to have two American guests joining us tonight, because we just feel like there are plenty of opportunities for these relationships to continue to grow in cyber. So thanks, Igor.
Thank you very much again. Before I introduce today's speakers, I would like to expose our goal. So the cybersecurity, the future of business can be, let's say, addressed quite wide or also quite specialized in a way on very narrow field. So goal of this webinar is to identifying opportunities connected on cybersecurity, especially in this year, because Slovenia will take part of big international, let's say, politics floor with presidential of European Union on the second half of the year, we will probably touch also this topic. Especially business and education or skills on cybersecurity fields are rising. 20% of global gross domestic product represents digital economy. That was from the article of one of our guests today. But whatever statistic we see a lot of potential, and on the other hand, a lot of threats in this field of business, if we look at like business. Before introduction, I said I would like to mention, let's say, 5 topics which are popular last couple of years, especially for last year. The first one is lockdown changed business rapidly. Digital transformation is on its way. It's really going faster also on Slovenian market, especially now with European funds, which are intended directly to this kind of projects who address cybersecurity, not only cyber, but also information security. The second one is supply chain will be more targeted. By that, I mean resilience is crucial. Resilience and business continuity in a way are crucial if we would like to have, let's say, from production to sales and after sales, whatever we produce, goods or services, and supply chain is really crucial, and it will be more targeted by threats, either cyber threats or other threats, because we have to watch on security also on, especially on supply chain, like traffic, road traffic, etc., with all those borders which arise again, at least in Europe. We will try to discuss also about this. Security Operations Center services, it's the third topic I would like to expose. Namely, we can't do in our business everything. So we should be focused on our primary business, but other processes or services, it can be outsourced. And this is one of the opportunity for cybersecurity and information security. The fourth one is that Cold War on cybersecurity will arise. However, we call it Cold War or threats. Recently, we heard about some cases which can be connected to critical infrastructure with outage of that kind of services. Of course, business depend on ICT, and because of that, this cybersecurity will hit up. And the fifth one is, let's say, framework which is present now about 60 years, from 60 years ago. In 1960s, they start to systematically approach to IT with people, process, and technology pillars. And also in cybersecurity, all those 3 components, people, process, and technology, are important. They have to be balanced and addressed if we want to have, let's say, secure, reliable business continuity, resilience, our business. So now let me introduce our panelists today. I will just highlight those differences between our guests. The full bio you can, of course, find in webinar on a web page. First, I would like to welcome Ms. Melissa Hathaway. She's a globally recognized leader in the field of cybersecurity and digital risk management. She has experienced what is very important in administration and international institutions. By meaning administrations, she was deeply involved in 2 administrations under presidency of George W. Bush and Barack Obama in the United States of America. And her combination of policy and technical expertise is advantage for business development to their clients. Then I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Maurice Dawson, professor from Illinois. Actually, his experience is from, let's say, from the global market, not just United States of America, experienced in education. And as a director and distinguished member of the Center of Cybersecurity and Forensic Education, he has also a Doctor of Philosophy in Cybersecurity. This is quite impressive for me because at least in this environment, we still don't have a lot of connection with philosophy or other ethics and cybersecurity on the other hand. So because of that, it's a really interesting panelist. The last but not least, Mr. Denis Čaleta, a Slovene professor, scientist, and experienced in corporate security, critical infrastructure protection, and counterterrorism field. So his expertise is more than just cybersecurity, but he addresses also other security-related fields. He holds PhD from Faculty of State and European Studies, and he is leading and contributing in national and international-wide project on security field. As I said, not only on cybersecurity, but also wider. Welcome again to all of you. And I would like to start with first question, which was quite interesting when I was reading some articles from Miss Melissa. She mentioned in one article that in a way we could address awareness, especially a rise of awareness about cybersecurity, also with a kind of Hollywood approach to achieve accountability and responsibility, especially with younger generation who are eager to give personal data easily. We all know about all those social networks, how easily especially younger generation, they don't aware about those risks they can be exposed to. And it could be one of the opportunities for a lot of industries, different industries. Can you share us a bit more about your idea, or how would you address rise of awareness, Ms. Melissa?
Thank you, Igor. It's a pleasure to be here. And I do think that media and communication channels have to open up and really kind of demystify the technology and the risks that it presents to society. And I used to teach a class that was completely through the movies and you know, whether it was sneakers to talk about encryption, or the net to talk about steganography, or war games to talk about how you do remote access and gain into things, or even Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that goes to the privacy of your data. And I think it's really important that we start to get to the media that starts to say, what is the problem we're dealing with, whether it's espionage, it's intellectual property theft, it's the loss of your personal data, it's the corruption of medical research. And then the next question that the media, they're very good at telling you the what, but they don't tell you the so what. And so the so what is, well, if the corruption of the medical research could delay the vaccine, the loss of your personal identifiable information or your national identity card could lead to fraud against you personally. The loss of your intellectual property could mean that your business will be shut out of business here in the short term. And then the next thing is then, so, you know, it's the now what do I do about it? Here are the basic things that I can protect my personal data. Here are the things that I should be doing as a corporation to protect my intellectual property. Here are the things that I should be doing as a government in order to secure my critical infrastructures and the safety of my citizens. And so I do believe that whether it's the media, it's the press, it's the different communications channels, we need to we need to move beyond the what to get to the so what, and the now what is my responsibility in addressing the problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. Probably is the most interesting because this topic is quite not interesting for younger people. And that's perhaps is one of the reasons why should we address on different channels, on different ways. Thank you. Mr. Dawson, Mr. Maurice, business continuity and resilience is crucial due to interconnectivity. You have been studied a lot about, let's say, hyper-connected world. Especially now, we also have in Slovenia put in place the first 5G network, mobile network, and with IoT expansion. Expansion leads to national level, but not only to business level. And of course, not just national, but also international level. What risks do you see and what approach do you recommend to take secure in this hyper-connected world?
Well, there's another thing. When you're thinking about 5G technology, there's very few players in that world in terms of building that technology. And when you're thinking about implementing 5G at a national level, do you truly control that technology? And the other thing is when you're using 5G, you have to realize that these signals are much shorter, right? These signals are much shorter. So you need to install more of these particular modules in your actual country or city to make sure you can do things like driverless cars and stuff like that. But the amount of data and how quickly that data can push through 5G is outstanding. But the problem is how quickly you can actually lose data through that as well. So when you have these devices, you have to make sure there's controls in place to make sure data is encrypted. It's you have something in place to make sure that you can actually see what is taken or understand if there's an actual leak. You need some type of intrusion protection in the detection system to see what is actually going on within the systems. And a lot of times we as people, we want to be more connected. We want more devices. We want things that have Wi-Fi and stuff like that. The problem is that you look at all types of networks. You have a personal area network that relies off Bluetooth. So you're talking about a 30-foot network. But when you take that personal network into a small company, now you have a local area network. And if you also move into a university, you have a campus area network. So now you're becoming more connected with more and more networks. And it, say you want to get coffee, now you're on a unsecure network while you get coffee. So it becomes an issue because now you have all these technologies that are all authenticated to one particular point, which allows an attacker to find the weakest point quite easily. And in terms of business continuity is important and essential because if something goes down, when you say that, hey, I'm a cyber resilient company, well, what happens if you get an attack? Are you down for a week? You're losing money. So to be truly, have business continuity, you have to have a real disaster recovery plan. You have to say, hey, I have a hot site up. I have a warm site up. I have a trailer to move people. If I have critical employees, I can move these employees to another city. It is not just in cyber tech. It could be a natural disaster. If you're in a place that has hurricanes, earthquakes, fires, and floods, you have to have some type of business continuity and disaster recovery plan in place to continue your actual business.
Thank you very much. I agree totally. We have quite challenging here in Slovenia because, for example, these policies and these countermeasures are usually at the same person, and this is not probably the wise idea. We will address afterwards. But when you were talking now about, for example, like 5G technology, I cannot imagine the CISO, so Chief Information Security Officer, fears. Namely, usually they have fears about everyone who works at the company and everyone who doesn't work at the company. With this technology, they will really have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, well, Igor, one of the biggest issues is a lot of companies, they allow you to bring your own device. And so when you bring your own device, you may authenticate to the network, but there's nothing really in place to make sure that your device is hardened. When I say hardened, it has appropriate security controls in place. So you're not actually leaking data by accident. It doesn't mean you could be doing it on purpose, but you can be doing it just by accident. You could say, all right, well, I want to send an email. The email's not encrypted and you're looking for somebody with a common name in that particular country. And you send it out and it's like, oh, it's unencrypted data. They have maybe the keys to the kingdom because you made an honest mistake.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Denis, as corporate security specialist and specialist on critical infrastructure protection, we would appreciate for your evaluation how security in public services on one hand and private businesses sector differ. What should we put attention on and where do you see opportunities? By critical infrastructure, I mean for those, the energy, traffic, food and water supply, healthcare, finance, etc. Denis.
Igor, thank you for the question. And of course, telecommunication, which is one of the important subsector of critical infrastructure. It is important that we understand, as I mentioned before, that we are all in the same boat. We cannot differ between public and private sector. And of course, we have different missions and authorities, but all have the same end state. And this is provide resilience of our businesses or public services. And of course, in the end, we should provide proper level of national cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, of course, needs systematic and comprehensive approach in both sectors. And critical infrastructure is in this respect important example where we have both sectors involved in providing all necessary activities, especially in cybersecurity field. And we are pretty much facing that a lot of critical infrastructure, transfer from public to private. So for this example, public-private partnership has in this respect a really important role. And we cannot afford that we become the weakness chain in this system. Of course, for this reason, it's important that we understand each other and that we work in the same direction, public and private.
Thank you, Denis. As I can hear, you also have a guard behind you.
Yes,
probably.
Sorry for my
No problem.
cybersecurity watcher.
That's very good. That I not forget, please, I encourage all participants, if you have questions, raise them during the session via chat. We will have one pool of questions or answer actually after a few hour discussion, but anyhow, please feel free to comment or to ask questions. Miss Melissa and Denis, what kind of initiatives would you expose in United States market and EU market? We have been talking before the session that in Slovenia, we have, not only in Slovenia, but all European countries during the Corona crisis, we will be funded by EU fund on particular projects, let's say, or initiatives. To what extent do you see public or governmental initiatives to address cybersecurity also in private business? So I'm asking, how do you see these initiatives? Because there are a lot of tendency to put money on public, for example, services. But on the other hand, a lot of services, especially public services, are now transferring or going to privatize. How USA and EU interoperate on national and international level, Ms. Melissa?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. I think that what happened during the over the course of 2020 is it showed us the importance and actually the fragility of our telecommunications system. And while I think that it handled many things quite well, you started to see when we had outages, whether it was, Tata Communications had a global outage. You had all three telecommunications providers in London had a London-wide outage for 7 hours. In the United States, we've seen Amazon Web Services, AT&T, many outages, some of which were caused global outages, some of which were local outages. And now when everybody is working from home, learning from home, and things, you start to see really the importance of building out resilience of the telecommunications infrastructure, and that we're putting high demands on it. That also shows to an adversary that you have single point of failure that could bring down all of society, really, if you take down the telecommunications anywhere. And I think it's something that we're not talking enough at our capitals. We're talking about 5G and bringing in 5G, but we're not talking about the risks of 5G and what we need to build in for the isolation mechanisms and segmentation of those networks. We're just talking about it brings us 10 times the capacity. And so we need to really start to think about what are the demands over the next 3 to 5 years on our core infrastructures. Now, in the United States, we've identified certain critical infrastructures, and currently in the current Biden administration, there is a fair amount of money working to get broadband or telecommunications service, maybe even from space, to our rural areas. And I think Slovenia has the same problem. We have a digital divide in the United States based on urban and rural locations, as does Slovenia and many other countries. And it will have to become a priority if we want everybody to participate in the digital society, to get that broadband to the last mile, to allow those services to and those people to gain to new services and to be able to innovate, to get education, et cetera. We also regulate our sectors in the United States, mostly based on availability first, and then to some degree security, but we don't have much penalization requirements. It's more of a minimum standard of care. This is very similar to the Network Information Security Directive of the European Union. That's identified 7 or 8 critical infrastructures. And it's, I think, important to note for anybody listening on the call is that the Network Information Security Directive is under review and expansion. And so as more companies become deemed essential service providers or critical service providers in Europe, and they don't meet that minimum standard of care, this is where the difference is between the Europe and the United States, is there is a serious penalization. It'll be more akin to the 2% of revenue or 10 million euro fines if you don't meet that minimum standard of care. And so I'll stop there, but I think we're approaching it similarly. But we have not, from a regulatory perspective, of a minimum standard of care. There's some penalty based and there's some non-penalty based. But then the most important thing is I don't believe our capitals have reconciled the fact that telecommunications is currently our single point of failure upon which all of society depends. And it's going to require a much better investment strategy and resilience strategy going forward.
So Denis, what about you? I mean, about those initiatives, and especially when we are talking, if I understood right, Melissa, in one way we put a lot of money in infrastructure, but we should talk also about other aspects of technology like 5G, etc. How do you see this in Slovenia?
Yes, thank you, Igor. Melissa opened some very good points. From the Slovenian perspective, of course, we have different authorities which are responsible for some different steps regarding the cybersecurity area. But from my perspective, it's important that we understand that cooperation, exchanging best practices, and of course, involvement, new technologies and new solutions is the most important for strengthening the system of cybersecurity in a national and of course in the international level. And this understanding is even more important in countries as Slovenia, because we are facing with limited resources in all levels. And I'm quite satisfied that the government of Republic of Slovenia understands the importance of cybersecurity area. Of course, with this show some concrete steps in some national tenders for example, for small and middle-sized companies. These are important steps, especially in support of some digitalization of business processes, penetration testing, education inside the companies. And all this supports, especially in the small and middle-sized companies, are important to raise this awareness and, of course, technical capability in the cybersecurity area. And from the EU perspective, I would like to say and raise some important issue that, for example, EU Recovery Fund, which now EU launch for support after the COVID situation, requires that in the part of digitalization and cybersecurity, the state should invest some amount of these resources in this area. With this, EU shows importance of also cybersecurity as one important sector. In the field of research, Horizon 2020 and the new perspective of Horizon put a lot of efforts and a lot of tenders in the cybersecurity area where the especially research and businesses come together and research in a way to get new technologies to be tomorrow better in the cybersecurity area.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. We, as you mentioned, also had a year or two ago a lot of funds to address the raise of awareness at the companies, but I'm afraid those funds haven't get the real effect of, let's say, on other projects. So more or less we are stuck on some infrastructure level in a way. But before we continue,
Igor,
sorry.
Sorry,
Please.
maybe just to interrupt you. This is the run in the long way. It's
long run, yes.
To achieve in a year or two all your goals, especially when you are touch the culture, the security and organizational culture in the organizations. It's important to understand that this is the long-standing run.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Denis. Before we continue, I would ask Anna Maria if you can, we can have a poll for the audience. One question we would like to address to all of your attendees. Please, if you can answer, what does cybersecurity stand as a topic in your company, organization, wherever you work there, or you just know the company? We will address this also with questions we have from one of our participants later. Sorry. Let's continue now. Maurice, opportunities are global. As we already established, companies are also present on the global market. In Slovenia, we have a lot of companies, like bigger companies, of course, for our environment, like Gorenje, Devesoft, Pipistrel, Lakrapovic, etc. And nevertheless, we have a lot of one-man band, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of those who are working on platforms like Kickstarter, etc. How would you describe societal aspect of cybersecurity? I mean, is it fear against challenge? Because if you're small or with a business or with a team of co-worker, should you be afraid of it or should it be like a challenge? Is, for example, industrial espionage depends on different culture? Are there differences? Because you have experience not only from United States, but also from other countries.
Sure. So like if I was an entrepreneur and trying to develop a technology and actually build it in Europe, I would be really worried about GDPR, being compliant with GDPR, and what would happen if I actually was not in compliance. I end up actually getting in trouble with the law based upon data getting released and stuff like that. So that's one thing. So individuals are looking at risk versus reward. It's like, is it worth the reward of having to pay the substantial fine, or should I think about a particularly different technology? The other thing is when you're developing technologies and you're trying to implement in certain countries, if you have something that uses like strong authentication, right? So you usually have something you have, something you know, something you are. Some countries, the citizens will not want to use that strong authentication. They may not trust their government, their own government, with those credentials. When I was in one particular East African country, no one would go directly through the internet of that country. They would all use VPNs and connect through South Africa because they said the actual privacy laws for citizens there was stronger than the country they were in. So that becomes an issue. And then when you think about even certain parts of the United States, not everyone is willing to give away certain credentials. If you have to use biometrics, like, well, why should I give away biometrics? That's not really needed. I can just use username and password, but they fail to understand what does strong authentication get them. Simple things like Facebook. Facebook in the United States, you need to add strong authentication, multi-factor authentication, which means you have your password, username, but it also sends a message to your mobile device. Some people are unwilling to do this because they feel like it's a breach of their privacy. They're giving away too much data. However, on Facebook, they're giving away everything, which really doesn't make sense. And then the other part is you have to think about that in some countries, implementing certain technology in certain countries it becomes an issue. You have the International Trade and Regulations Act, ITAR, which deals with export controls of cryptography to certain countries. And so you have to think about your technology, where you're going to export it to, the laws there, and also, is someone going to reverse engineer what you've done and actually just replicate what you've done? So these are all things to think about, and hopefully people see past all these items and think of a solution. But these are our barriers, especially to small organizations. If you're going to have a project on Kickstarter, it's like, well, what do I want to do? I'll give an example. I'm a big gamer. I grew up playing video games. I was not good in sports or anything, but I'm good at video games. So now I play emulators. But if you look at emulators, they have emulators for all these various consoles, and you can buy them out of China, and you can play all these games in the States for $90. You can play everything. And so if I was going to develop a console or a particular gaming system, I would be worried that that particular console could become an emulator over in China. And then all that money spent in working on that project can now be bought for cents on the dollar. So you have that issue as well. Like, what are the repercussions for someone replicating what you've done?
Superb, very good example. Melissa, let's talk more about health crisis recently. You already touched, let's say, some changes, but I would like to expose from risk management because point of view, because home and mobile work is where threats are rising due to Corona crisis recently. What can we learn from recent cases in USA and other countries? Because you have also experience from other countries, not just USA, but also other countries in Europe. But I'm not thinking just about infrastructure level, about capacities, etc., but more or less organizational risks or complete risk for the company where mobile workers arise in such a mass.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you. It's an important question. So I think when I think about when we moved to work from home, we're almost at the 1 year mark. It was, at least in the United States, the global pandemic was called on March 15th. So the Ides of March. And so when we're coming up on this 1 year, in that first 90 days, you saw pretty much, a migration of hundreds of millions of people going to their homes, and we keep our businesses going. But we kept our businesses going through exceptions, and the exceptions were never documented. And so whether it was, you don't need to use a virtual private network to come into or I'm going to relax the protocols on the firewall, that all of the different things that we had in place to protect the enterprise were basically jettisoned. And now we're trying to build back in those things. So the first thing that I see happening now as 2020 and transition into 2021, the number one thing that businesses are being affected by is ransomware. It's increased more than 700% globally. It's going after our healthcare systems, against our manufacturing systems, etc. What are the ransom gangs taking advantage of? Unpatched software and hardware systems is the number one thing that they're coming through on. Second, it's a phishing campaign. So you've clicked a link that is going to then download the malicious software. What happens in these ransomware attacks is really kind of a threefold thing. First, you click the link or you ingest the malicious software because you didn't patch your system. They generally are very good at getting laterally through your organization, increasing the escalation privileges so they have access to all of your software, all of your data, all of your enterprise. Phase two is that they have now determined what are your business critical systems and your business critical data sets. They exfiltrate it all, so it's all gone, and then they encrypt it, so they make it unusable. And then on phase 3, they demand ransom payment, usually through Bitcoin. And if you do not pay, they will pretend or actually do dump your proprietary data out on Reddit or in GitHub or wherever on the web. So what happens is if you're a corporation, you've got a real problem, right? You're fragile, you're vulnerable, your workforce is from home, you're not keeping up with patching your software and systems, you're going to high probability of ransomware at this point, and then you're suffering from both a business continuity disaster recovery and a data breach. So companies are choosing to pay. This is a real problem because now you're basically fueling the crime and the illegal activity. And in many cases, at least in the United States, these criminals or these gangs are affiliated with Iran, Russia, North Korea, and they're on an entity list. So it's actually illegal to pay them. And so now you have a third legal problem as a corporation because you're basically paying off criminals to, and the fines or the Bitcoin requirements for ransom are getting quite large. They're averaging now $50 million US. So if you're a small corporation, you're likely going to have a go out of business event with a ransomware. So a few things that I would recommend to anybody listening to this, because we're going to be in a work from home situation for the remaining of 2021 and potentially into a good portion of 2022. And then we'll be in a hybrid environment, I think, for the foreseeable future, just because of vaccinations and health protocols. And globally, we will not be completely vaccinated until probably 2024, if you're thinking about a north-south and you're a global corporation. So, the first and foremost is that you have to keep clean machines, current software, current hardware, and that's hard to do. When you're getting over 100 patches a month from Microsoft, 50 patches from Cisco, 400 from Oracle, I could go on. It's incredible. It's difficult to keep up. Second thing you have to do, if you can't keep up, and no matter what, you got to back up your data, and you have to prove that you can rebuild your company from the backup systems. And the backup systems better be separate and not connected to the internet, because those who have the cloud-based backup have lost most of it. And I want to know, what is your real mean time to recover and restore your enterprise? Is it 2 days? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? Because most companies are averaging 19 days before they can rebuild after a ransomware. And it could also be a life-ending event. And then, you really need to start to look at how do you elevate enterprise risk management? It's digital risk management. You have to know what your business critical systems are, what the business critical data sets are, because I cannot tell you how many companies are bringing back email before they're bringing back production. And so clearly they don't know how they're making money. And so we need to think about those things. Those would be the top 3 things, right? Keep your software and hardware current, be able to back up and restore from backup regularly, and know what your business critical systems and data sets are.
Thank you, but there is also challenges with bring your own device principles, not probably, but surely.
I think that, there is no longer a perimeter of which you can secure. So there are, not only do you have a bring your own device endpoint problem, and I've got an unsecure house that your employee is working from, and they've got Alexa or Google Assist or something listening to all their calls, and they've got their kids on a gaming console, like Maurice, that's on the same thing as the rest of the house. So there's all of those other things, but you can also think about the average organization has 578 suppliers, third parties that are connecting also. So if you just think about that expanded attack surface is exponential. So you have to plan on the worst day. The worst day is, how quickly can I recover my systems? Mean time to recover, mean time to restore and get back to business. And a lot of companies have a stated objective. A bank, it could be 2 hours. A hospital could be, a half a day or whatever. Another organization could be 2 days, 72 hours, but they've never practiced it. So they have no idea if they could really bring back everything from backup data systems and get to a mean time to recover.
Yeah, I agree. Practice is crucial. But if we would extend this, for example, on legislation, let's say different legislation on state level can boost or limit further development and research. For example, artificial intelligence in China can be developing much more rapidly than in United States or in Europe due to GDPR and other legislation. How do you see this legislation balance versus development? Because on the other hand, legislation would like to protect us or our business, but on the other hand, we are limited with development.
Yeah, well, I look at, you have to look at some of this legislation that is emerging and globally is really about economics, foreign direct investment, forced intellectual property transfer, and other things. So you could even look at this of, or closing the market, right? So in China, they have laws now, at least 5. Well, they have a data protection law that's trying to bring it in line with general data protection regulation so that there can be a reciprocity for doing business in China and doing business in Europe. Open up Europe for Chinese companies because they're seen as following GDPR and protecting the data. But there's also a cybersecurity law and another law in China that has forced tech transfer and a data localization, which one could look at that as twofold, right? If I'm coming to do and I want to operate in China, I have to store all data locally in China. Well, that means I have to have a data center in China. I have to hire Chinese colleagues, et cetera. And so it's a foreign direct investment strategy. And then there's also a forced tech transfer strategy there within the law that you have to give 49% of the business to Chinese companies. So you're actually teaching and training those companies how to do your business. So eventually 5 or 10 years from now, you might likely be out of business because they'll displace you in the market. We're also seeing data sovereignty laws emerge where I'm claiming ownership of your data. This is also happening in China, but it's happening in Russia as well. That by de facto of you doing business in China, all of that data now is becoming flagged as that national sovereign data and in the interest of the state. And that's also quite interesting. The data privacy and protection mechanisms are global, but they've been around since 1971, when Sweden was the first to have a data privacy law, which is the basis of really GDPR, the provenance of GDPR. And the rest of our countries are coming in line with different data protection and privacy considerations. And I would argue that now in the United States, our California consumer protection law that is in effect is actually at a higher standard or threshold than the general data protection regulation of Europe. So that will cause problems for European companies now operating in the United States because they're going to have to up their game in order to be able to deliver here. We're also seeing challenges with data portability. With the ruling from Facebook and Schrems 2, you're seeing a pause in transatlantic data transfers, which is not good for Europe and the United States. So we're going to have to figure out a way so that we have better data portability and so that we can enable this digital economy. I think that some of the laws that are emerging in China and in the Asia Pacific are also going to put challenges to data portability, especially if I make it sovereign data and it has to now stay in my country and I've now claimed it. Then the last thing I also see is a new data monetization, the digital services tax. And that presents a problem for small and large companies, because if I'm an over-the-top service, or I'm moving data on the backbone of the telecommunications, I now have, in addition to a value-added tax, I have a digital service tax. And while France and Europe is really thinking about it as 3%, there are other countries that are like Mexico has got it at 16%, Indonesia is at 10%, Turkey and Singapore are over 7%. So that becomes another cost of doing business in the digital age that we have to start to reflect upon. These regulations, whether it's sovereignty, data portability, data localization, a services tax, et cetera, are all going to be, I would say, limits to development in this great opportunity of the digital economy, we as countries are making decisions that are limiting our businesses' opportunity to play in a global economy.
Yeah, you really opened a lot of questions also with all those examples. But before we continue, we will then concentrate on education and skills. Anna Maria, do we have already some answers on our poll question?
Yes, we do. Sharing now.
Superb. I suggest that we should comment them during next discussion. As I see, it's almost similar for the first and second, not almost, but it's the same percentage, and it's not yet in our agenda, 25%. Okay, thank you. We will comment, as I said, during the next questions or on our session. Let's try to concentrate now on educational and skill level. It is question for, let's say, all of you in a way. We also got this from our audience. Do you think that computer science, a general subject, is enough to be extended with cybersecurity content, or it should be addressed separately? Or if I rephrase that, how do you see the education level for cybersecurity, if it should go to specialized particular training, or we should go in more generalized way for education? So I'm trying to implode you to, let's say, outsourcing of some kind of services, and the outsourcer needs different kind of skills than insourcer. How do you see the education, or how we should train our people to get skills as fast as we can? Miss Melissa, for beginning.
Well, I think that it's really important to be thinking about this broad and wide. And I'll take it first from a business school perspective for a corporation. I need to be able to articulate my business strategy, where I'm headed, what market I'm in, et cetera. And I need to recognize that there's a technology strategy that's underpinning that. And the technology strategy will, of course, hopefully enable it, but it is also bringing about risks that have to be managed. And those risks, if I have insecure systems, unpatched systems, then fold into operational risk, financial risk, and legal risk if I cannot protect the data. There's also a legal area because of the data localization and other things that are happening that are actually changing my technology roadmap to enable my business. And so you need to have this a holistic lens of the technology risk, the operational risk, the financial risk, and the legal risk, all is to the health and future of your business. So if I start there, that's important. If I were to go down to the basics of your question about computer science and maybe information science writ large, we've done an injustice to anybody trained in computer science over the last 25 years. And even when I took programming earlier in my life, you are rewarded based on the fact that the actual program works. You are not required to ensure that all of the additional functionality that you put in there is removed, which those could be the things that are exploited. And you are not held to an engineering requirement of resilience, a graceful degradation. We basically have a kind of a binary. It works or it doesn't work. It fails drastically. And you're seeing this in the industrial control systems. You're seeing this in basic software and other things. So I think that fundamentally we have to change the way we're thinking about computer science. And then from a cybersecurity writ large, we should not be thinking about this as computer science or IT, as I said earlier, that we need to be thinking about broad-based education, that this is like a fundamental skill like math or language or history, It needs to be mainstreamed all the way down into our, kindergarten through, through middle school, and then technical training is very important. But then bringing it into law, business, medicine, etc., I think is going to be very important. And Slovenia has recognized the importance of education. It's in your 2016 cyber strategy. It's in your digital agenda. It's in many things for the country. But it's a question of, are we still thinking about it as IT and computer science, or are we thinking about it holistically for where the digital economy and where the future of the country is going?
Yes, thank you. Maurice, how do you think how we can get that kind of skills or skilled people as fast as we can? I mean, regarding also other countries you have experience.
Yeah, so it's a twofold thing. So you need individuals who have a bachelor's degree and perhaps higher for more advanced skills in terms of AI or machine learning or data science. But at least particular positions such as computer programming, basic programming, JavaScript, Python, you should have some type of quick pipeline, which is perhaps a camp that gets individuals to some particular level, because computer programming is the new blue collar job. So we have to stop thinking that you need a full-fledged computer science degree to do basic things with computer programming. Now, if you're talking software engineering, it's different. Now, the problem is, when you look at degrees such as computer science, software engineering, IT, or informatics, the thing is, you don't need new degrees. You need to insert cybersecurity in the course curriculum. So if I'm teaching about the software development lifecycle, then throughout the lifecycle, I need to talk about how is security injected. Now, the other item is, like, in the States, we have something called the National Security Agency, the Department of Homeland Security Centers for Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. So it requires that certain programs have what they call knowledge units. And if you're teaching a class on low-level programming, you're talking about how is cybersecurity in assembly, various compilers, what are the issues with these particular types of compilers? If you're talking networking, how do you put up firewalls, routers, and stuff like that? You have all these items. Now, the university that I'm at, Illinois Tech, we have other academic alliances. And for one, I'll give an example, it's called US Stratcom Academic Alliance. And for that academic alliance, it's focused on deterrence. And so now you're looking at cyber mixed with political science. And so what a country has to do at a national level is thinking about what type of cyber they need, because cyber is broad. Cyber came from the term information assurance, before then, information security. So do you need someone who's specialized in the actual components such as FPGAs, ASICs, and stuff like that? Someone that understands secure software development, or someone that understands the actual network, or someone that understands things such as Internet of Things data, things of that nature. So at a national level, you need to come up with a strategy that says, all right, well, we are going to employ this type of technology. We're going to have AI run. Okay, now you need to think about bias. How does it work against people of different skin color? Will it be able to find the particular threats that we need? If you're worried about hooligans in your football game, can we actually use biometrics to identify these hooligans inappropriately? But if you have people of different ethnicities, will there be an issue in actually really identifying these individuals? So the national strategy needs to match what you are planning to do with that technology. And that's important. And then from there, you can say, all right, this national strategy, this is the education that we need individuals up to par with. One of the things I liked about Germany, they had the Ausbildung. So you don't go to university, but you can do an Ausbildung. So you do an Ausbildung, an apprenticeship with a company, and that company does a certain amount of, I think it's like 3 years of training, and now you're qualified for that job and you continue to do that job. If you employ a model such as that, using that with people who have degrees, I think that a number of particular countries would be in a lot better shape, rather than hoping for that golden nugget for that person to get a bachelor's degree or master's and very few PhD to be specialized jobs. You can break down these jobs into manageable components, and that's what needs to happen.
Thank you, Maurice. Denis, just in short, what do you miss the most in Slovenian environment? I mean, educational environment.
Yeah, we should understand that Slovenia, of course, is a small country, and we have a shortage of resources. But on our new cybersecurity strategy, when we are preparing just now, we put a lot of inputs and effort, especially to the educational system, not just in the college level, but also in the primary school, secondary school. And we have here two ways. The first is I completely support this just Melissa already mentioned, that we should aware as a society that we are living in the digital area. So we should prepare all community to understand at least basic of cybersecurity actions. On the second track, we should be able to find the pupils or students which are pretty much talented for the informational science and all this supporting science, and to direct these people to some kind of specialization of cybersecurity area. And of course, it's important that we understand that in a small and middle-sized companies, we cannot afford high special expert for the cybersecurity, but we should have people inside such a small companies that have a basic understanding of on the first layer of cybersecurity what to do, and for example in next layers where they could find support as some kind of subcontractors, specialized companies, of course, depending of the portfolio of the businesses. And this is important that we raise this security awareness inside our companies and society as a whole. This is the most important task of our national educational system, probably all over the world.
Connected with business, like you said. Considering that we run out of time, let's wrap up. I suggest that on short, please comment the pool of questions. Namely, the cybersecurity is not yet on their agenda. It was 1/4 of them, quite high percentage, if you ask me, if you can comment this. And we also have one question, it is interesting from our audience, about single sign-on solutions. They are existing, but whenever, for example, I try to have one password, one identity, it's not possible to sign on to different kind of services. If there is any comment from you, so please give away for our audience and comment on cybersecurity is not yet on the agenda percentage of our pool question. Miss Melissa.
Well, I think that perhaps the cybersecurity, we need to be thinking about it again as digital resilience or digital risk management, and stop talking about it as cyber and talking about it as every day. You have every part of your life is connected to this digital world, and start, I guess I would roll back of the what, the so what, and the now what, and make it real through the different stories of what and how it is that, the lights are on and the water is running, not because the utility is working the way it did yesterday. It's because it's working over the telecommunications system, and it's, and it's digital. And I don't think a lot of our society really understands how much of their life is really remains from a digital perspective. And to the extent that we can help raise that awareness and educate everybody on what their job is, and as we move forward, that I think is what will start to make it a more streamlined or common conversation versus this esoteric technical thing.
Does the answer surprise you? I mean, regarding cybersecurity, is not yet in agenda of some of, let's say, companies in that high percentage?
Yeah, I mean, the 25 to 38%, yes, that's surprising because most companies are,
At
they're
least
digital
thinking about it.
companies, whether they realize it or not. And, so then I have one major manufacturing international company that did not prioritize digital risk. And they got a ransomware, and now it's 100%. All that they care about is how do they get to digital resilience over the course of this next year. This shouldn't be a bad event that actually makes it a priority.
I agree. Thank you. Mr. Maurice, your thoughts?
Sure. One of the things with the mention of single sign-on, I think it's a bad idea because the goal is to increase the work factor for the actual potential bad actor. You should make it easy for them to break into your system. Security is all about layered areas, or it's about layering. So individuals get through one point, they get through another, and in that particular meantime, you have time to protect your asset or move it to a place that is going to be secure, right? So, but having a single sign-on is just a bad idea because if someone breaks that one sign-on, they're into your system. You have to think about multi-factor sign-on and stuff like that. Single sign-on is not a good ordeal. And then plus, like, for example, those that use Google products, when you authenticate with your Gmail, there's a number of other products that you guys keep authenticating with using that Gmail. That means you don't have to put your password and stuff again. It's stored, it's in your cookies. You can just click on the other site, And that's a bad idea because when you have Gmail, Google Pay, Facebook, and all these other particular entities, even YouTube, because you can purchase services of YouTube like YouTube TV and whatnot. That's all basically one account. And if that one account is taken over, then they have access to every single thing else that's associated with that account.
Thank you. Denis, your last thoughts?
Yes, maybe about the results. We should understand that GEA College is focused on the small and middle size companies. And of course, if we should, or we will have here the big companies in Slovenia, the results would be different. I'm the president of Slovenian Corporate Security Association, where all major companies, especially critical infrastructure providers, are inside. And I should tell you that the cybersecurity and the resilience process and all other activities are on the table, and we are pretty much, discussing and doing a lot of things on this area.
Thank you very much. Before I hand out to Anna Maria, I have just one question, really quick, with yes and no. Will you physically cover your cameras after this webinar, or do you trust your PC and software on this PC?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I have my actual cameras for my laptop. They're covered with stickers. They have black stickers on it. And then I have a HD camera, used for Twitch or whatever. I mean, like I said, gaming. I take that off. So I never have my actual camera machine open because you just don't know. Because one of the things is, in terms of security vulnerabilities, your camera can be on and someone can change the indicator so you do not know it's on, but it's running the entire time. That's how a number of websites come up that pretty much show people their intimate moments because they had no clue that their camera's not on because they're familiar with seeing that red dot. So it's the indicator that lets people know, but the indicator doesn't have to be on.
Melissa?
I don't normally cover my camera, and because there are many other ways I can turn on the audio, I can turn on the phone, and there are a lot of ways I can actually get into, to listen, and I really have nothing to hide. So, if you want that badly, then, have at it.
Denis?
We do a lot of penetration testing, and of course I cover my camera.
Thank you all of you for sharing this and for this really nice conversation. Anna Maria, back to you.
Thank you so much. This hour has really rushed so quickly, and thank you for taking this extra 10 minutes. I believe they are certainly worth of time because the discussion was really interesting, inspiring. So thank you all. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Denis. Thank you, Maurice, for joining us today, for sharing your professional knowledge and experience on cybersecurity issues. This is important, indeed an important topic that will be discussed great more in the future. And of course, thank you also, Igor, for leading this panel. Really, it was a great hour. And of course, thank you all the participants who were joining us here today. I hope that you get a lot of new ideas and things to discuss about and to think on it, not only for your companies, but also for you as individuals when it comes to cybersecurity. I would invite you all to join us the next week for our webinar on artificial intelligence. So as you can see, we are moving on to more, how to say, more deepening the topics and digging deeper into these interesting subjects. So I hope that we will see you all again next Tuesday, same place, same time. And again, thank you all. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Denis. Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Igor, for your time. And it was really a privilege to have you all here. And as we always say, to conclude, thank you all. And I wish you a good night to Slovenians and a good day ahead to all our American friends. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye.
Bye.